Welcome to Crossroads. The Supreme Court of the United States has now temporarily blocked a lower court order that would have allowed for food stamp funding to continue during the government shutdown. Also, breaking news on that, well, Democrats, enough actually, voted with the Republicans to end the shutdown. This was in the Senate. Doesn't mean it's going to go through now. We'll have to see if the House votes with it, how that all goes. But for now, enough Democrats have voted with the Republicans to break the shutdown and restart the government. Part of that, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, they still basically put that on hold. And the whole thing about giving free health care to illegal aliens, that's also still on hold. One of the big issues for Democrats. But again, enough have voted now with Republicans to end the shutdown. We'll see where it goes. I'll keep you all updated. Also, meanwhile, President Donald Trump announced part of his plan to help with the high cost of homes. And he wants to have 50-year mortgages, meaning you'll basically never own a home. You're going to be like 80 years old. Also, there are now other issues at the root of the high cost of homes, one of them being mass migration and illegal immigration. Now, the Trump administration is pushing for more deportations, but they're also now taking steps to restrict some legal forms of migration. Basically saying, are you a burden on the American people, or are you actually benefiting our country? I'll be talking more about these topics a lot more today, so make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, let's jump into it. And also, big news before we get started, I have a new documentary coming out. The new documentary, Truth Under Fire, The Story of Charlie Kirk. It's going to be coming out November 19th. I've been busy recording it, as you all know, see me on the road a lot. This is going to be completely free to watch. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Rumble, if you're on X, it's free to watch. We are going to put it on Epoch TV, though. All you have to do is register if you want to watch it. We have the link in the description. That's, again, going to be November 19th. And also that day, we have something special. 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to have an additional episode for the premiere, and you can come join me for a live Q&A session about the documentary. So make sure to join me for that, November 19th, 9 p.m., and the link for that is also in the description. So make sure you come by for that. All right, that said, let's start with the stories. SNAP benefits are now cut off for most people who are receiving them. This is until Congress can agree on a budget extension. Senate Democrats have now voted with Republicans on that. We'll have to see where it goes still, but a lot of this is still on hold. The government shutdown, as of now, is the longest in U.S. history. And as this takes place, well, the Supreme Court has now temporarily blocked a lower court order that would have allowed for food stamp funding in the meantime. Let me show you this. AP said this. The Supreme Court on Friday granted the Trump administration's emergency appeal to temporarily block a court order to fully fund SNAP food aid payments amid the government shutdown, even though residents in some states already have received the funds. As I mentioned previously, you have some states where the, again, federal court, local court in these areas, said the government has to allow for SNAP benefits. In those states, again, if the court orders it, they have to do it. But a random judge in a random state cannot make a ruling and basically influence the entire, government, all 50 states. Doesn't work that way, and the Supreme Court has now agreed to that. It continues stating, a judge had given the Republican administration until Friday to make the payments through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, but the administration asked an appeals court to suspend any court orders requiring it to spend more money than is available in a contingency fund, instead to allow it to continue with planned partial SNAP payments for the month. It notes this. After a Boston appeals court declined to immediately intervene, Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson issued an order late Friday, pausing the requirement to distribute full SNAP payments until a appeals court rules on whether to issue a more lasting pause. Meaning, again, it's not fully done yet. We'll have to see. But it notes that Jackson handles emergency matters from Massachusetts. Not a full end-of-the-road ruling, but again, something in the meantime. Also, big story happened. The Blaze has posted a story, and they allege that they found an individual whose way of walking, right, the person's gait, matches that of the suspect who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th. This is a big update, huge news. We'll see whether it's absolute, but I'll talk about it. And I'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break.
All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. You are, of course, watching Crossroads with Joshua Philipp. I'm just here to share a message about American Hartford Gold, my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Now, obviously, the recent tariffs have made the markets super turbulent and volatile. With every new piece of tariff news, the markets seem to either crash up or crash down. And of course, it's worth mentioning that these conditions don't only affect Wall Street. They affect all of us through our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I'd like to introduce you to a company that I trust and I myself use to secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move our assets into something tangible, into something you can actually hold, which is physical gold and physical silver, two precious metals that act as a hedge against all those decisions being made in Washington, D.C. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your door, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive offer. When you call them today and you mention the name Joshua, you could receive up to $15,000 in free silver with your initial investment. Take advantage of their special offer. You can either just call them at 877-260-2764 or text Joshua to 65532. All their information will also be down in the description box below. And now, back to Crossroads.
Welcome back. The Blaze has posted a story alleging they found an individual whose way of walking, right, their gait, matches that of another individual, and they say that this may have pointed to the person who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th. Remember, there was a bomb planted at both of the main buildings of the Democrats and Republicans. Now, the Blaze says this: a computer program that compared the bomb suspect's gait to that of Shawnee Kirchhoff produced a 94% match. Now, I want to note, again, innocent till proven guilty. This person has not been charged. This is the Blaze making a pretty bold statement. They believe it's credible enough to even name the person they're accusing. So they're putting a lot on the line here, to be honest. Big question is going to be whether the federal government follows up on this, whether they investigate. Again, a computer system like basically detecting similarities in the way a person walks is not like an absolute, they can throw you in prison for it type thing, but it's an indicator that could lead to additional investigation. The big question for them now is, frankly, they've put a lot behind naming this person. The big question now is whether the federal government follows up and actually investigates, but they seem to really be behind this. They note this. They say a forensic analysis of a female former U.S. Capitol Police officer's gait is a 94 to 98% match. Not absolute, but pretty, they claim pretty substantial. To the unique stride of the long-sought January 6 pipe bomb suspect, according to a Blaze News investigation confirmed by several intelligence sources. They have done some additional investigations into this, including with evidence from Judicial Watch and other groups, which they believe has given corroborating evidence on other sides of their narrative, and they believe that they know who the person is. They note this. They say a source close to a congressional investigation of January 6 additionally told Blaze News evidence has emerged recently that pointed toward law enforcement possibly being involved in the planting of the pipe bombs. Now, this is massive. Basically, what they're saying is this. They're alleging that a member of the Capitol Police, one of the individuals who used to work with Capitol Police in charge of the whole thing that day, later went on to work for the CIA. The suspect they're claiming now works for the CIA, was the one who planted the pipe bomb. The other evidence they're pointing to, suggesting that there may have been like an inside job, they note violations of use of force, which at Epoch Times, of course, we've covered that extensively. They note that someone within the Capitol building opened the electronic doors to let in the protesters, which did in fact happen. Again, there were two sets of doors. One of them can only be opened internally and electronically. And the people who went to the building while Trump was still speaking at the Ellipse, video footage does show them arriving at the door, making hand signals, and then somebody opens the door for them. That door could not be broken into by any normal means. It's a very heavy door, and somebody let them in. These three pieces of evidence now are being used to create kind of a grand narrative that this was maybe a handful of individuals, or maybe even a couple individuals, who may have known about this, who may have planned this, and may have worked on it. Now, is that the case? We don't know. We can substantiate through our reporting. Absolutely, there were mass violations of use of force. There were individuals throwing, again, like stun grenades into the crowd, violating use of force, shooting down at the crowd with paintballs and, again, like rubber bullets, which can kill people, also a violation of use of force. There were incidents that actually caused a lot of the police injuries, including not all of them, just a couple officers who did this, throwing, again, tear gas grenades into the crowd when they were downwind from it, meaning the police gassed themselves. A lot of the police injuries were actually caused by them gassing themselves. And now this. Again, I'll say this, the report is very interesting. We're going to have to see whether charges or additional evidence is brought forward. This is a very major claim, especially if they're naming the person, right? This is a very major claim. The basis of this analysis is, again, on the way a person walks. Kind of like a fingerprint, right? It's like saying the fingerprint is a 94 to 98% match, not absolute, but pretty dang close. Again, we'll have to wait and see how reliable this is to actually name a suspect. That's to actually call somebody out by name on it. Again, the individual's not been charged. When they are, if and ever they will be innocent till proven guilty. I did actually look into this type of analysis, measuring a person's gait, again, the way they walk. Now, on that point, identifying a suspect by their gait, it's an indicator that would normally lead to additional investigation. It's not the end-all, be-all, right? You're not going to throw someone in jail if you find that a suspect matches like another individual on a security camera or something. Identifying a suspect by their gait, it is more common in the UK. So if you're in the United Kingdom and they catch you on a surveillance camera, it is a more common form of criminal investigation where they may actually use computer systems to look at the way you walk and try to match it to other computer simulations. Hey, this person walks the same way, and then follow it up with additional investigation. If that is the only form of evidence they have on you, it's probably not enough to convict you. They would need to, again, use that to trigger additional investigation, look into you, and then see whether you should be thrown in prison for it, or even face charges for it. In the United States, this is not a common form of investigation. Historically, there have only been a few cases where this actually has kind of been part of the criminal investigation, and it's usually just one piece of it. It's not like they're going to convict you just because of this. It's tended to it's regarded as more of like a low to moderate system of reliability for evidence. But there are people who argue on both sides of it. Some say it's very reliable, some say it's not. Some say that actually it's not a reliable way to actually identify or accuse a person. Others argue based on, again, evidence that you can get a pretty close match. Again, even the Blaze is saying like 94% roughly. It's not, again, not absolute. You still have a margin for error, but they stand by it strong enough where they have been willing to name an individual. The big question going from here, it's going to be whether the federal government, whether federal law enforcement actually follows up on these claims and carries out their own investigation to see if they can find additional evidence on the suspect. Or the other possibility, the person they've accused, they might, sue the Blaze. That's also a possibility. And if they choose to do that, then it'll go through discovery. And again, it'll be up to them to do. Once you're in the phase of discovery in a lawsuit, they can get access to communications. And we'll see where it goes from there. This could turn out to be a very interesting story. I'll say again, innocent till proven guilty. We'll see what happens with it. But this is very likely the beginning of maybe additional investigations or a lawsuit. But we'll have to find out. Now, look, another topic. When Biden was president, the protests on January 6th, they were used to investigate and charge President Donald Trump, his allies, his supporters. That was the meta-narrative during the Biden administration, right? That Trump tried to overthrow democracy. But it actually wasn't really new in terms of the accusations and attacks against Trump. In fact, during Trump's first term, he faced basically the same thing, a meta-narrative that painted him as the enemy of the United States, and that was the Russiagate allegations. Turns out Russiagate was fake. It was funded, paid for by the DNC and the Clinton campaign. They went through a private organization for opposition research, which then hired a former British spy who then collected claims unverified from two mostly unvetted information from two Russian sources, meaning Russiagate was literally Russian disinformation. It was fake. It was absolutely fake. But, it painted a whole meta-narrative that really undermined Trump's entire first term in office. And during his first term, the Russiagate allegations were also used to trigger investigations into him and into his team, into his, entire campaign, and into his presidency. And this is also yet again in the spotlight. But it's interesting now because the tables have turned. The investigation now is into the people who triggered that. The investigation now is into all the people who were involved in that grand conspiracy and whether they knew that it was fake and were just trying to remove the sitting president from office. Meaning, basically, an insurrection, a coup. Now, is that the case? Well, we'll find out, because guess what? Fox News says this. A federal grand jury has subpoenaed former CIA Director John Brennan, former FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, the FBI officials who were accused of having an affair and were involved in this whole investigation and were writing very saucy fantasies of themselves together as they passionately investigated the president-elect and later president of the United States. Among others, it says, as part of the Justice Department's investigation into the origins of the Trump-Russia probe, Fox News Digital has learned. And they say this. Now, look, just to be clear, this is Fox News. They're basing this, again, on anonymous sources, okay? So take it for what it's worth. The reality also is that Fox News does have pretty good access to the Trump administration. They're of the mainstream media, they're the Republican ones, and Trump has gone to them for quite a lot, as has the administration. So, in my opinion, they're more likely to get legitimate sources. But they say this. Sources told Fox News Digital Brennan Strzok, the FBI's former Deputy Assistant Director of Counterintelligence, and Page, a former FBI lawyer, were served with federal subpoenas on Friday. Is that the case? We don't actually know, but it does seem to be a credible claim, at least based on my opinion. They say that law enforcement officials told Fox News Digital that up to 30 subpoenas will be issued in the coming days relating to the investigation. My own personal analysis on this, what does this mean? You have the former FBI, heads, basically, who are involved in the Trump-Russia probe investigation. You have the former CIA director. You have a lot of other individuals. Again, James Comey's facing additional charges. Basically, the nature of the charges, the investigations, all the things being carried out on key figures, all of whom were involved in some way or another to investigate then candidate Donald Trump and later President Donald Trump. All of them are facing some type of investigation. Now, some people might say, well, Josh, not all those investigations or charges are any way related to that. Some of it's like, oh, they were violating real estate laws. They mislabeled real estate. They're being accused of maybe some kind of, maybe they made false statements or something like that. Why? How does this relate? This is why. If you're under investigation, if it's real estate, if it's making false charges or false claims, if you lie, if you make false statements before Congress, what does it mean when you're under investigation? It means that all of your communications during that time and leading up to it are basically able to be investigated and viewed by federal law enforcement. So what does that mean? It means that even if a person during the time of this made false statements about the Trump-Russia investigation, lied before Congress, and that has now been part of a criminal probe. If a person made, let's say, they mislabeled one of the homes they own, and their real estate investments are now under investigation, what does that mean? It means all their finances are under investigation. It means their communications are under investigation. It means that all the records they have are under investigation. And what does that mean? It means that if they were communicating, if they were texting, if they were making phone calls, if they had financial interest, if they were getting foreign money, if they were getting paid within this whole conspiracy, if they were materially benefiting in any way or communicating in any way, whether or not the investigation is for that or for something else, all of those pieces of evidence are now being looked into. Meaning, if they were involved, it will now be known. That's why this matters. And if they're now issuing 30 subpoenas of, these are top level officials, top level figures. Like, you're talking about the head of the CIA. You're talking about the guy who was in charge of the CIA, and the guy who was in charge of the FBI, and the guy who was in charge of, counterintelligence, and the woman who was in charge of a lot of the legal cases. And you're talking about like top level members of Congress, and the whole 9 yards. This is major. I don't think we've seen anything like this since, Richard Nixon and the investigations into him, alleging he was using, the federal government and, again, FBI and CIA to go after his enemies. Watergate, which is why they call this Russiagate. We haven't seen anything like this in the United States since Watergate. Now, look, we'll see what they find on this, right? But back to this article, it says the grand jury is out of the Southern District of Florida, not the Southern District of New York. And what does that mean? If it's out of the Southern District of Florida, that means the Trump Justice Department, they've gone to a court that probably leans more conservative, because this is the other reality in the United States. Look, the Trump administration accuses the Democrats of it. The Democrats will probably say that Trump is now doing it. There is such a thing as what they call judge shopping or court shopping, meaning if you want to bring a charge that is politically divisive, it's partisan, it's Republicans going after Democrats or Democrats going after Republicans, the court that you go to, if it's in a red state or blue state or red area or blue area, or if it's a woke DA or a more conservative DA, will, whether we like it or not, very likely influence the way the judge and the court look at the case. So if they bring a charge in the Southern District of New York, experience has told us you're more likely to get a very liberal jury. You're more likely to get a woke DA. You're more likely to get more of a left-leaning interpretation. If you bring it in Washington, D.C., you're more likely to get a Democrat jury. You're more likely to get people who, have friends and family who are part of that and read mostly liberal media. And, that's kind of their worldview. If you bring it in a super red area, you're more likely to get a conservative DA, a conservative judge. You're more likely, if you get a jury, to get a more conservative jury. And so it does make a difference. I wish this was not the case, but let's not lie to ourselves. This is the case in the United States. But it does note this. It says this is out of the Southern District of Florida. It says U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Jason Redding Quinones, is supervising the probe. As a bit of disclosure, I do not know where this individual rests on the political spectrum, so maybe I don't know where they stand on this, right? But that's where the thing is right now. They note as well that Fox News Digital first reported this summer that John Brennan was under criminal investigation, and so they're making the point. This does seem to line up, right? Big deal, very big deal. They said for 2 more weeks. It turns out it was, 5 more years. But here we are, right? Now, look, meanwhile, President Donald Trump has announced part of his plan to help with the high cost of homes. And this is a bit strange. In order to make homes more affordable, President Donald Trump wants to be able to have 50-year mortgages. Let me show you this, then I'll give my take on it. This is The Hill. They say Federal Housing Finance Agency, the FHFA, Director Bill Pulte on Saturday said the Trump administration is working on a plan to introduce 50-year mortgage terms for home buyers. And they say, quote, thanks to President Trump, we are indeed working on the 50-year mortgage, a complete game changer, Pulte wrote in a statement on the social platform X, and notes it followed a Truth Social post by President Trump earlier in the day where he shared a graphic just opposing an image of him next to one of former president, that's Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR, and notes the administration that oversaw the New Deal established a 30-year mortgage standard to help citizens recover from the Great Depression. I'll be honest, before they had those mortgages, homes were more affordable. I think the 30-year mortgages actually led to more expensive homes. But they said, you know what, you can't afford a home, let's make longer mortgages. And they say this. Similarly, Trump campaigned for creating affordability for the younger generation last year, but the president has faced headwinds on the subject more recently as prices rise. What's my take on this? I don't think this is a good idea. I'm just giving my opinion, but I think that a lifetime of debt, if you can do a 50-year mortgage, what does that mean? That means, look, if you're like super, I don't know, maybe is it conservatives who marry younger, maybe in your 20s, and you're super overachieving and you're like in your 20s, I'm going to buy a house. Or if you're in your 30s, which I think is more common these days, and maybe you get married when you're like 32 or 35, and you're like, okay, let's buy a home. What does that mean? Well, it means that if you buy a home in your 20s, you're not going to own a home because you're going to be paying for it until you're like in your 70s. You're like 73 or 75 or 78. And that's in the rare chance that in those 50 years you don't take out like a second mortgage or a third mortgage. If you buy it in your 30s, you're not going to own your home until you're in your 80s. And unless it's like at 30, it's probably going to be like 85 or 86. What does that mean? You're going to spend your entire life and never own your home. That's what a 50-year mortgage is. It means you're going to be basically renting for the rest of your life. You will never own a home. Now, is that a good way to encourage home ownership? Why would you buy a home if you're never going to own it? If you have to pay your mortgage, if you have to, again, one of the benefits of renting is, your landlord usually has to handle like repairs or like your washer machine. And if you're in an apartment, your washing machine breaks, or there's a hurricane and, the shingles get blown off or something like that. The landlord usually has to do it. If you're renting, honestly, it might be better than owning a home you're never going to own. So why would you buy a home? A 50-year mortgage is not home ownership. A 50-year mortgage means you will go your entire life until you're 80, 90 years old, and you will never own what you own. And then if you don't, maybe if you Unless you put your home in a trust, your kids probably will not inherit your home either. I don't think this is a good solution. Now, I understand why the Trump administration might be saying this. Hey, 50-year mortgages. In my opinion, this will subsidize the problem. Because in my take, what is the cause of the high cost of homes? It's that investment firms are buying up all the homes. It's that illegal aliens are buying up all the homes. It's that we've flooded the country with 30 million, 40 million people, illegal or non-illegal, I guess, migrants, and we haven't really built homes to match that. If you understand the nature of supply and demand, if you have five houses and you have 5 people who want to buy them, the market is going to match those 5 people. If you have 5 houses and 3 people who want to buy them, it means that the houses will compete for the market, meaning they'll lower the prices. If you suddenly flood the country and you create 10 people who want 5 houses, what does that mean? It means the people who own the 5 houses are going to rack up the prices, and they're going to compete with, these people are going to compete to buy it, meaning you can rack up the prices. That is the situation we've been in the United States. We have a restriction on the construction of new homes. We have red tape, we have zoning laws, we have massive, massive regulations on, again, people trying to build homes, buy land, again, develop land. It's very hard to build new homes because of all the red tape. The other problem you have, again, major investment firms are buying up all the single-family homes. You have people who are, even from other countries, buying up homes and treating it like investment pieces. Banks, because of the way the banking system is set up, when you get your bank loan, right, because it's bank loans, the bank basically buys your house for you and then you pay them off over the course of your life, 30 years, now 50 years. The bank owns your home. And if you need more money and you get a second, well, the bank double owns your home. The bank owns your home, you don't. And so the banks own a lot of the real estate. Now, this will actually increase, if you do 50-year mortgage instead of 30, this will increase bank ownership of homes. And so the banking industry treats real estate as investment pieces. What does it mean if it's investment? It means they want to raise the value of an asset. Real estate is now an investment piece. Real estate is not a place to raise a family. It's an investment. And so when real estate becomes an investment, what do investors want to do? They want to raise the value of their investment. What does that mean? They want the price of homes to be high. And if the price of homes goes down, what does that mean? It means they freak out and take, skydiving lessons out their office windows because they just lost all their money. They don't want that. So what does that mean? It means they will take steps to ensure that the price of real estate does not go down, that it will go up. And what does that mean for young people trying to buy homes? It means good luck, because the entire system is not capitalism, it's crony capitalism. It is red tape. It is state interventionism on the supply of something. It is a public-private partnership squeezing an asset to increase the price of it. It is interventionism to, again, prevent the construction of something which the free market would demand, meaning the free market is not functioning here. Because if we had free market principles, it would mean the market demands more of something and you build more of it. You cannot do that because of state interventionism. Meaning what you're seeing here is what they would call a mixed model economy, which is socialism. And so socialism, socialist policies, state interventionism, or mixed model economies is squeezing a market. And the people suffering are the people trying to buy homes. That is the reason you can't afford a home, okay? That's why you can't afford a home. Now, on that point too, I would say the simple answer to this, either you increase the supply or you deport people, one of the two. What you're seeing here is a policy to maintain high prices while finding ways to help people pay higher prices in an artificially inflated market. Meaning what you're seeing here is a further subsidization of a problem. This is not the free market. You're watching, one of the issues I've pointed to, because a lot of people my age, right? I'm a millennial. A lot of people my age say, I'll never own a home. I can't afford medical care. And what do they say? They say, well, capitalism doesn't work. I guess I'll become a socialist. That's what they say. The irony of this is the things causing them to not be able to afford health care and not be able to afford a home are from socialism, not from capitalism. What you're seeing here is the result of state interventionism. This is crony capitalism. It is a mixed model economy. If, again, the free market were able to function, it would mean if you can't afford drugs, if you can't, again, medications, if you can't afford medical care, it means that people would create new practices and offer lower prices because that's the market and that's what the market demands. Squeezes on the market prevent that from happening. State interventionism prevents that. Same thing with homes. If this was free market capitalism, if there's demand for something, you supply it, and that would mean that people just go and buy land and build more homes, and great, there's more homes. State interventionism is preventing that. And the reason they're preventing it is because, again, it hurts people's wallets. Some people don't want the prices to go down. This is not capitalism. This is socialism. And the irony of it is that socialism doesn't work, but people will vote for more socialism because they believe that the socialism causing the problems in their lives is from not socialism, and so they'll vote for more of the problem to fix the problem they have. It's classic, the classic way it works: create a problem and then claim you're the solution to the problem. Wonderful, here we are, right? And that's why you get things like what just happened in New York with the elections. People vote for more of the problem. But I'd say there are also other issues at the root of the high cost of homes. One of them, mass migration, illegal immigration, as I briefly mentioned. Now, the huge increase of demand for a limited supply. If you double the demand for a product, you're going to double the price for the product, at least. The Trump administration is now pushing for more deportation, so they are doing that also. But they're also doing something else. The Trump administration is also now taking moves to restrict some legal forms of migration. And the basis of this: are you coming here to benefit this country? Are you coming here to work? Are you coming here to create value? Or are you coming here to live off of the American people? Are you coming here as a parasite? That is the question. Fox News says this: a State Department cable obtained by Fox News Digital directs U.S. embassies worldwide to enforce sweeping new visa screening rules under the so-called public charge provision of immigration law, a move that revives and expands a Trump-era standard officials say was relaxed under President Joe Biden. Meaning this is a law already in place. They don't have to actually create a new law to do this. This is already the law. It just wasn't being followed. And so Trump doesn't have to do really anything on this other than say, guys, why are you not enforcing the law on the books? Start doing it. Now it says this: the guidance instructs consular officials and all the global consulates, the officers, to deny visas to applicants deemed likely to rely on public benefits, weighing a wide range of factors including health, age, English proficiency. Are you bothering to learn English, or are you coming here and you're just not going to integrate whatsoever into our society? Finances. Have you shown in your country that you're able to create value? Or are we counting on you doing something for our country that you don't even do for your own country? And it says even potential need for long-term medical care. Do you have underlying health issues? Do you have health issues? That means you're going to come here and maybe work a couple years and then go on welfare, right? Now they say self-sufficiency has been a long-standing principle of U.S. immigration policy. The cable that went out to U.S. posts across the globe on Wednesday states, And it says, and the public charge ground of inadmissibility has been part of our immigration law for more than 100 years. Basically, in other words, what is the real basis of the United States? What does America offer you? What is the actual American dream? Because you have young people saying, well, you say everybody is equal, equality, equality. What does equality mean? It is not equality of outcome. What America offers you is equality of opportunity. Self-sufficiency is the only thing you are promised in this country. You are promised that your success or your failure is up to you. If you work hard, you will probably succeed. If you don't, you probably won't. And so if you want to be self-sufficient, if you want to build your own little castle and your own little piece of heaven, come to America. If you want to come here and say equality of outcome, and I want to have everything everybody else has, but with none of the effort, this is not the country for you. And so what America traditionally has stood for is self-sufficiency. It promises you freedom. And if you come here wanting to be, again, someone who lives off other people, it means you want the American people to be your slave. You want them to work and you want to live off their work. We've done that for a long time. And the American taxpayer has become a slave to everybody living off the American taxpayer. Slavery still exists. Yes, it does. And the hardworking American paying the bills of everybody, again, getting government programs, is a slave to those people by definition. And so if you're not able to have the fruits of your labor, I'm not saying you're like living in destitute, but again, these are, you could say we're high-class slaves, but if my taxes are paying the bills of people who don't want to work or take care of themselves, it means that I am your servant. And the American people are kind of tired of it. Now it says here on this new rule, any past use of government cash assistance or institutionalization could also be grounds for denial. Meaning, they've now made it so that if you have a visa, you have to get it renewed. If you want to have your visa renewed, what they're going to look at, have you in the past received government assistance? Have you been getting welfare? Have you been getting food stamps? Well, bad news. If you want to renew your visa and you've been living off the American people, if you've never bothered learning to speak English, if you've been here 10 years, you never learned English, if you've been here 10 years, you're living off food stamps, if you've been here 10 years and you have a visa and you've built a life here, but you've just never integrated or contributed and you're living off the American people, they might take your visa away. That's what they're saying right now. They say, quote, you must examine all aspects of the case. The guidance states, including, it says, the petition, visa application, medical report, affidavit of support, and any information uncovered in the course of screening and vetting. It's going to be hard to renew your visa, in other words. And if you're a person who came here and you have a visa, you might lose it if you are found to have any of this. It says this, quote, older visa applicants nearing retirement age are to face particular scrutiny. That's a big deal. Because look, you have some people who can be like, look, I came here, I worked through my youth, I'm retired now, I'm still on a visa, but I get food stamps and government assistance and Medicare or whatever. You get all kinds of things. If you're on a visa, they might kick you out of the country. Even if you're older. That's what they're saying here. They say both for their job prospects and whether they can support themselves once they stop working. You're not going to retire in America, in other words, if you want to live off the American people and if you're on a visa. They state, quote, long-term institutionalization, for example, at a nursing facility, can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars per year and should be considered, the memo states. That's the actual quote from the memo. It notes as well, the new guidance follows an executive order signed by President Donald Trump titled, Ending Taxpayer Subsidization of Open Borders. The cable says the order seeks to ensure that, quote, no taxpayer-funded benefit go to unqualified aliens. Remember what I said previously when Trump first made this order. When they say unqualified aliens, they're not saying illegal aliens. They're saying aliens, meaning foreigners. So that might not seem big on the surface, but that is very big. If you're saying unqualified aliens, that could mean you're here legally. It could mean that you're on a visa. It could mean you have even a green card, heck. And if you have not learned English, if you're living off welfare, if you want to retire, they might take your visa away. They might pull it. If you're an illegal alien, they might deport you. If you're a legal alien, they might take your visa away. If you're being shown to not benefit the American people, or if you haven't integrated. If you have not made an effort to conform to society, even if you've done everything else, they might still kick you out. It states this as well, quote, "The public charge determination is in the opinion of the consular officer," which is a big deal, right? What does that mean? It means it's not going to go to court. If you're going to have to get your visa renewed. Who decides if you've learned English? Who decides if you're going to be a burden on the taxpayer? Who decides if you've gotten welfare? Who decides if you have underlying health issues? Who decides if you might need to go to an elderly care facility? Who decides this? Not a court, not some big institution. It's going to be the consular officer has the sole power for this. That person with the rubber stamp, welcome to America, stay here another 10 years. That's the person who gets to decide this. It says the cable reminds, meaning this has always been the case, but they're reminding them. It says placing the burden of proof entirely on the applicant. It also states, quote, that officers are instructed to conduct a, quote, comprehensive and thorough vetting of each case to assess the, quote, totality of the applicant's circumstances before issuing any visa. Everything is under the spotlight. It says, quote, there is no bright line test. The cable adds, quote, you must consider all aspects of the case to determine whether the applicant's circumstances suggest that he is more likely than not to become a public charge at any time. So they have to make sure that if again, suggest that he is more likely than not to become a public charge at any time. It means that even if you are contributing currently, if they believe that in the future you will have to go on welfare, if in the future you will have to be put in an elderly care facility, if in the future you'll need Medicaid or Medicare, if in the future you'll need food stamps, they might take your visa away. And this even, again, goes into, have you bothered conforming to American society? Do you speak English? If you've lived here 10, 20 years and you haven't even learned English, if you haven't even learned English, they might boot you out. That is how big of a deal this is. Now, this could be a very big deal also, given that about half of migrant households in the United States, and I'm talking legal, about half of migrant households receive at least one major form of welfare. What does that mean when you take them? Now, look, it's not clear whether it's like their kid, they've come here, they've had anchor babies, right? They have kids or whatever. It could be extended family households. It doesn't necessarily mean the migrants are getting it. But that means that about half of migrant households, they might kick a lot of people out. And I'm talking legal migration. This isn't even illegal migration. This is legal migration. It calls into question the issue of migration itself. Is migration to the benefit of the American people, or is this migration to the detriment of the American people? Have you come here as someone who wants to, again, join the American people, learn our culture, learn our language, become part of a society? Or have you come here to bring the third world to America? Have you created the third world around you? Have you bothered learning the language? Have you bothered caring about our culture? Have you bothered contributing? Or did you come here just to benefit yourself? That is going to be what it is, right? Now, like, apparently this also extends even to people who are overweight. And that's going to be big because actually a lot of the obesity in the United States, a lot of it's like people who, it's a lot of migrants, okay? A lot of the obesity epidemic is from those communities. The New Republic states this: a Thursday directive from the State Department sent to embassies and consulates around the world indicates that people applying for visas to the United States may be rejected if they have certain medical conditions, as we mentioned, on the grounds that they could take up domestic health care resources. Now, the cable, as we mentioned, it says you must consider an applicant's health, certain medical conditions, including, but not limited to, cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, cancers, diabetes, metabolic disease, neurological diseases, mental health conditions, can require hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of care. What does that mean? If you're on a visa and you suffer from basically any illness, they might also kick you out of the country. That's going to be controversial because, you know, you might see headlines. Trump, kicks out, pregnant woman who, has cancer or something like that. Trump kicks out, mother of two who are American citizens who suffers from diabetes. They're basically doubling down on this. If you have a health condition and they believe, I don't know what the basis of this is going to be. Maybe if you have your own health care, you're not on like Obamacare, you're not getting taxpayer funded health care, maybe they'll let you stay, but they're actually taking this into consideration. They're actually taking this into consideration now. It notes, the announcement then goes on to mention obesity, stating that it could be connected to asthma, sleep apnea, and high blood pressure. So even if you're obese, and if you know like what the definition of obesity is, like our modern definition of obese is considered husky by, like, I'm talking medical definition. What we would consider husky these days would be medically defined as obese. So obesity, we have an obesity epidemic in the United States. That's a lot of people. They might actually take away people's, visas if they're obese, even if they do not exhibit other forms of health problems. They're even noting asthma and high blood pressure. Like, who doesn't have like asthma or high blood pressure, like something like this? This could be a lot of people. This could be a lot of people. And the cable continues. It says this: all of these can require expensive long-term care. And it continues stating, quote, does the applicant have adequate financial resources to cover the cost of such care over his expected lifespan without seeking public cash assistance or long-term institutionalization of government expenses? Again, the basis of all of this, the reality is this: if you risk asthma or high blood pressure or like obesity or like basically anything, you've never learned English, if they believe that you have received government benefits, taxpayer funded, or you will, they might take your visa away. If you are showing any signs that you've ever lived off the American people or might potentially in the future, they might take your visa away. That is how big of a deal this is. That is, I don't know how broadly this will be enforced. It's going to be up to the officer doing the application, the consular official. But this is huge. This is huge. Like, I can't even emphasize how big this is. That is a lot of people who might lose their visas. And in my opinion, based on my analysis, I don't think this will mean the Trump administration is going to reduce the number of migrants. I think they still want a lot of migrants, but they'll probably have a different standard of which they grant visas, and they're probably going to be giving it to the high achieving people in those countries. If you show that you can build a business. If in your country you've already done great things. If in your country, you've gone to college and you've gotten a degree in something and you come here and you want to actually work, and you've demonstrated an ability to bring value to the country you're in, then it's likely America will welcome you with open arms. They call that merit-based migration. It's something Trump had talked about during his first term in office. It's actually what even Canada used to have. Again, going back like 5-6 years ago, the previous Canadian migration system was merit-based. The migration policy of Australia is merit-based. Many first world countries that are even considered very liberal, they have merit-based migration. America, for the most part, even though it's on the books, we've not had this. We tend to let people in who, they're just destitute and poor and they've never brought value to their countries and they want to come here, and we tend to let them. And that has been the way we do it. They're changing it now. They're really changing it now. With any policy, we'll have to see what it looks like when it's actually enforced. Because, the reality is too, you might have some consular officials who have kind of, the bleeding heart, right? They're probably more liberal, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying they tend to be more compassionate people. That is the reality. I would say conservatives tend to be a bit more straightforward and kind of by the book, and, all right, you're not valuable, to the curb with you. They're more likely to do that. Someone a bit more liberal will say, I'm sorry, I feel bad for you. And they will be more likely to say, look, I'm going to stamp this and, watch out. They might be more willing to do that because there actually have been a lot of undercover videos of people admitting that. So we're going to have to see. Trump making this policy will not be absolute. It's not going to push out everybody, even if they do meet these criteria where they should lose their visas, technically by the law. But you probably will have a lot of people who lose their visas based on this. All right, that said, folks, questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, leave it in the chat. Let's jump into some questions. Ooh, I went long today. Sorry, I don't look at the time sometimes when I'm doing the show. Sorry, I meant to end sooner so we can jump into some questions, but because I have a noon radio interview I have to do. See more butts. You're saying when I was young, things were different. You're saying I remember when they first started pulling handicap spaces in parking lots, nobody would park in them. Even handicapped people were embarrassed to use the spots for people to park in them. Yeah, in my lifetime, it wasn't really like that. I don't remember. I can say though, I'm 41 years old. I'm over the hill, I guess. I don't feel that way, But I can say I feel like I'm growing up in a different country. I feel like I live in a different country than the one I grew up in. And I know a lot of people who feel that way too. I don't feel this was a common thing in the past. In the past, because of traditional culture, society would not drastically change every 10 years. Now, part of that's the result of, technology, right? I didn't have cell phones when I was a kid. We didn't have the internet until I was in my teens. I've watched the world change very drastically. When I was growing up in San Diego, it was a different country. It was a much more innocent time. There was more of a unifying culture. I go there now, I feel like I'm living in a different country. When I walk around New York, I feel like I'm living in a different country. I no longer recognize the country I live in. And I know a lot of people have expressed similar feelings. Whether it's the change in culture, where you have things that we would have thought were kind of weird, and some of us still do think are kind of weird, being normalized, whether it's mass migration, where we don't even speak the same language, probably, as a lot of people we run into. whether it's the stark difference in worldview and culture that now separate us. It's harder to find common ground with people. And so it is a common feeling where a lot of us feel that we no longer have a unifying culture. And it's when you don't have a unifying culture, it's easy to feel that you no longer have anything to do with the people around you. I do think this is part of the reason why there's a greater feeling of isolation these days. There's a greater feeling of loneliness these days. And a greater feeling of maybe nostalgia, that a lot of us remember what it used to be like, and we miss it. You know, I do think for a lot of us that's a common feeling, right? Gina Mikulik, you're saying, how many times does the Supreme Court need to tell district court judges that they are outside of their authority before they stop the activism? I've thought that too. Yeah, so if you all remember, we thought it ended, right? You have a lot of these district judges, and they try to block the President of the United States, and they create sweeping national holds on like the actions of the President of the United States, right? Trump tries to deport people in like Florida, and a California judge blocks it. Like, how does that work, right? That has been the case for quite a while now. The Supreme Court has determined that a judge in one state does not have jurisdiction in another state. You can't do it. You can't have district judges blocking nationwide injunctions. Don't work anymore. But what you are having is judges in a state trying to order branches of the executive branch of the government. So a judge in California, for example, trying to tell the housing administration they have to give out money to people demanding this policy. And the big question is, if a judge can order a department of the federal government, the executive branch, meaning the judicial branch influencing the executive branch, does that order require that branch to provide that service to the entire country or just to that one state? Now, this is a little different from nationwide injunctions because, what the Supreme Court determined was that a judge cannot block federal action like Trump nationwide and just put things on hold as the case moves basically to the Supreme Court, which is where like almost everything goes to these days, which is not normal, by the way. You did not see this in the past. But we have so many constitutional arguments these days that everything has to go to the Supreme Court, it seems. It used to not be like this. The Supreme Court is not a lot of people. They should not be having to like oversee every single case like we see happening right now, which means that it takes forever for anything to get done. But some would argue maybe that's part of the purpose of this, that everything gets put on hold, an injunction, until it goes to the Supreme Court. And that might take 4 years, it might take 5 years, it might take 7 years, it might take a decade. It takes a long time for something to go to the Supreme Court. And so what does that mean? It means they can basically turn Trump into a lame duck president even though he has a supermajority. It means that they can make a lame duck president through the use of like a single district judge. A random judge in Hawaii can basically make the President of the United States unable to do anything because of the nature of the way they can do this. And so, it is a good question. Like they keep finding other interpretations. Well, you said I couldn't do nationwide injunctions, but could I, hypothetically speaking, force the federal government to do this? I, local judge, just ordered the federal government to provide welfare to all the people. I've required them to do this. Do I have the authority, greater than the President of the United States, to do that? That's a good question, right? And then, of course, it gets appealed and it goes higher up. But does it stay in the meantime? I mean, it's kind of crazy, but we don't really have answers to this right now. The short answer to your question is this. they keep finding loopholes, tiny, minor interpretations that allow for different actions like this. There's all kinds of loopholes within the law. And unfortunately, the way the law works is people tend to manipulate loopholes until the law becomes so overabundant that there's no such thing as loopholes anymore. And when we arrive at that state, you're not going to have your freedom anymore, because you can't even, there's no more wiggle room, because the law is so incredibly overbearing. It's a problem you have with a lot of societies, where people messing with contradictions and minor interpretations end up creating such an overabundance of rules and regulations that there's no more freedom. But when you're dealing with arguments and debates and problems like this, they just keep on doing it. And so it's unfortunately the way that the laws historically in the world tend to work. While the founding fathers said that a republic tends to first evolve into democracy, then into tyranny. This is what they warned about. What's the verdict, doctor? A republic if you can keep it. Will we keep our republic? We'll have to find out. Denise B., you're saying, I feel that extending mortgages to 50 years is the same as increasing taxes. Both are addressing symptoms of a problem, but not the cure. And I'd agree. Let's put it this way. So a lot of people my age would say, Josh, I can't afford health care. If I have a health problem, I can't afford to go to the doctor. Why don't you support free health care? Why don't you support universal single-payer health care? Why are you such a tyrant? My answer is this. The reason you can't afford health care is not a problem of subsidization. It's not a problem of the healthcare system. It's a problem of the red tape on the industry. If the cost of a pill is $50, or let's say $10, okay? And it costs 10 cents to produce, and the company selling it sells it for 10 cents in Mexico and Europe and everywhere else, but they charge $10 in America. Why is that? Is it because America has free market capitalism? No, not at all. It's the opposite. It's because we have red tape. And so, if you create single-payer health care, if you create government health care, socialist health care, right? It does not change the price of that drug from $10 to 10 cents. More likely, it's going to change the cost of that drug from $10 to $20 or $10 to $50. Why is that? Because what it does is it subsidizes the problem. If a business knows that the government's going to pay for whatever they're selling. If you're a business and you make, bolts, you make a bag of bolts, and the government has a contract with you, and you're the only person they can buy this little bag of bolts from, and the bag of bolts costs, $1 at Home Depot, what do you sell it to for the government? They can't go anywhere else. What do you sell it for? You're going to sell it for like $50 or $500, which, by the way, they do because they've called them out. In fact, members of Congress have called it out. Look, this little bag of bolts, you can buy it for $5 on the internet. The military pays $500 for this little bag. Why are they paying that? It's because you've subsidized it. Because of the squeezes, the artificial state interventionist squeezes on the market. Well, you're a military contractor, we go to you for everything, and they don't look at the cost, right? We're gonna buy that bag for 100 times of what we would normally pay for it, because that's state subsidies, and that's how it works. That is not true capitalism. And so this is my problem when people my age criticize capitalism. They're saying, look, the system doesn't work. I'd agree with you. I agree. I agree healthcare is too much. I agree that homes cost too much. Solution to make the government give us all free homes and free healthcare? No, because it doesn't reduce the cost. It doesn't fix the problem. It subsidizes the problem. If you have a cousin or a friend or a neighbor and they live a terrible life. They're an alcoholic. They drink every day before work, or they smoke their vape pen and they put drugs in it, and they're high all day, and they're bad workers, and they're always asking you for money, and they can't get by, and like, dude, I can't find a job. Is the solution to just give them money, or is the solution to help them improve their life and their work ethic so that they live a better life? I'd say the latter, not the former. You want to help them so they can become sustainable. If you just provide money to something that is not sustainable, were you to just give money to that friend, they will never improve their life. If you give money to a homeless guy who's a drug addict, he's not going to improve his life. He's going to buy more drugs. You're not helping them. You're subsidizing their problem. If you want to fix a problem, if you want to help somebody, you need to fix the problem. You need to say, hey, buddy, I want to help you, but you need to quit doing drugs. Hey, buddy, I want to help you, but you need to not get high before work or during work. Hey, buddy, I want to help you. Let's drink alcohol after work, not before work. Let's find a compromise here. Maybe not on weeknights. How about that? You know what I mean? If you just subsidize the problem, you're not helping them. And it's the same way for socialist subsidization of a lot of things we have. If you have a broken medical system, which I would say we do, I would agree, our medical system is broken. It costs way too much money for everything. If they charge you like $50 for your little lollipop, like, what is this? Then they do. Like, people read their bills. They're like, what do you mean you charge me this much money for everything? The cause of the cost is because of a lot of different problems. It's because of state interventionism at multiple levels. It's because we've established monopolies through, again, a mixed model economy. You have people who have monopolies. It's very hard to get licenses. It's very hard to get drug approval. It's very hard for the research and development. There are systems that do price setting. In fact, for-profit systems even run through the government, meaning there's a lot of special interest involved. You have a lot of problems of special interest, broader than that. You have the problem of squeezes on the market, which allow drug makers, for example, to make Americans foot the bill even for other countries. And if I were to look at the problem, I'd look at all this. I wouldn't look at the end thing and saying, hey, wow, it's too expensive. I'd say, what caused it to be so dang expensive? It's all this. So if I subsidize it, if I create universal health care, does it fix this? No. It keeps all of this. It maintains everything that doesn't work. It just makes you pay for it. That's all it does. And then if you're forced to pay for it, you're paying for corruption, you're paying for special interest, you're paying for globalist policies where we're subsidizing it for everybody else in the world for some reason. You did not fix anything. You just put a piece of duct tape over the crack in your wall. You didn't fix it. You hippie rigged it or something. Do they still call it that? You Jimmy rigged it. You didn't fix the pipe. You just slapped some duct tape on it, buddy. You didn't fix it. It's going to break down in 5 years, and it does. That's why these things never work in the long term. You never fix the problem. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Socialism is subsidized failure. Socialism is subsidized failure. It prevents things that don't work from failing. The free market is learn from your failures and then build something that works. If you have a true capitalist system, these things all go out of business because they don't work. If you have a true capitalist system and you have the banks and the investment firms and foreign interest and real estate holders wanting to increase the price of homes by 10 or 20 times, what happens? Well, the free market capitalists go and build more homes and they screw your whole plan over. That's the way the free market works. But the people making money off it don't want that. That is the reality of it. And that's the irony that a lot of my generation doesn't get. They think, oh, it's the millionaires and the billionaires and all this stuff. Yeah, it is. But the problem is those people want socialism. Why do they want socialism? Because it's a state capitalist monopoly. They want the monopoly because they get rich off it. The solution to that is not the problem. The solution is let these things fail. Remove the red tape so we can actually fix the dang problem. That is the solution. And so the people criticizing capitalism, they're not criticizing capitalism. They're criticizing a mixed model economy. If you want me to be blunt, that's what fascism actually was. It's a mixed model economy. By definition. Now, I'm not talking name-calling fascism. I'm talking actual economic policy fascism or Nazism. It's a mixed model economy. The state capitalist monopoly, which is also socialism. Yeah, and this is the crazy roundabout debate we have as a society. We claim that the problem is caused by the thing that it's challenging. We claim the solution is the thing that broke it in the first place. It is such a lost debate because we're not having the debate on the actual issue. And when you propose, and I'm not saying us, but I'm just saying if you look at the solutions being proposed, more often than not, the proposed solution, answering the problem caused by the same thing, is more of the thing that caused it. That is not going to fix anything. And it's horrible. It's terrible. It's like watching, if I'm going to be a little mean, it's like watching a bunch of special ed kids try to stick a square block in a round hole, and you're like, buddy, you got the wrong block in your hand. You got to use the other one. And they're like, no, the problem is the hole. If only this hole would change, the block I'm trying to shove and it would go in. I'm like, that's not how it works, buddy. Let me help you, please. Pick up the other block. You're holding the socialist block. You got to hold the capitalist block. That's the one that goes in there. They're like, no, if only this hole would become round, then my block would fit. And you just keep watching them do it. And it doesn't work. And it never will work. But they won't listen to you. That is the plight of our current age. Maybe one day they'll learn. But hey, that's why we're here, right? That's why we do this show. That's why we do this show. So that's it. Join me again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, for more great discussions. In the meantime, please, again, like and share this video. Help us get the word out. Also, again, November 19th, the brand new documentary I've been going around the world actually for filming comes out, and we're going to have a special episode, live Q&A that night. So be sure to join me. Link in the description. And again, this is Truth Under Fire, the real story of Charlie Kirk. Join me then, folks, November 19th, but also join me again tomorrow for the show. I'll see you then. In the meantime, thank you so much for being here. Please take care of yourselves. And as always, stay informed and stay free. Thank you.